My name is Melissa Cormany. I am the Campus Ministry Associate, and I get the opportunity of working with college students here. I have with me today two of my very dear friends, Abby Massey and Jill Hansen, and we are going to be talking about the integration of faith and the medical and mental health professions. I'm going to just introduce them and let them have a moment to just share a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get into just a little question-answer discussion. So let's start with Abby. Dr. Abby Massey is the medical director of the Parkview Children's Emergency Care Center. She graduated with her undergraduate degree at James Madison University in psychology, I believe, right? And she completed a dual residency in pediatrics and emergency medicine at the University of Maryland in Baltimore, Maryland. And she's certified in both pediatrics, or she's board certified in both pediatrics and emergency medicine. And I'm really glad that she made her way to Fort Wayne to practice medicine, because she and her family have become good friends of ours. Jill Hansen is a licensed marriage and family therapist with the Aberdeen Group. She has over 10 years of experience working with adults, families, and children, as well as providing marital therapy. She's licensed by the state of Indiana as a marriage and family counselor, and she completed her undergrad in psychology at Ball State, and she completed her master's here at IPFW in marriage and family therapy. Was that about 10 years ago? Yep. So she found herself a little confused walking around the campus today, since she hadn't really been here in 10 years. But it's nice to have an alumni here. So I just realized that the three of us both have undergrad degrees in psychology. That's why we get along so well. So both Jill and Abby are friends of mine, and I'm really grateful that they agreed to join us today to share a little bit about their profession and the relationship that their faith has with their profession. So Abby, if you wouldn't mind coming up and sharing a little bit.
All right. So, hi, first of all, thanks for coming. As Melissa said, I'm an emergency medicine physician here at Parkview Hospital in Fort Wayne. Just to give you a little background on myself, so I am not a native Midwesterner, as you heard from some of my education. I was actually born and raised in Columbia, which is a suburb outside of Baltimore in Maryland. I lived there, mom, dad, and two brothers up until I went to college. I left Maryland and went to Virginia to James Madison. There I majored in psychology. I double majored in psychology and pre-med. I was on an EMT. I don't know if you even knew that. While I was in college, but had always kind of thought that medicine would be the route that I would go. I completed my undergrad and applied and got into med school at University of Maryland. I completed 4 years of med school in Baltimore, at which point I was pretty unsure as to what I wanted to do with my life. Did I want to be an ER doctor? Did I want to be a pediatrician? Those were the two that I was really torn between. And then I found out that Maryland offered this great program where I could train in both. So for 5 years, you specialize when you're done with med school. So for 5 years, I concentrated in separately emergency medicine and pediatrics. I kind of alternated every 3 months doing each of those portions of the residency. And then when I finished, I was eligible to sit for both the pediatric and emergency medicine boards. So while it says pediatrics and emergency medicine, I do most of my time is spent taking care of adults. My husband was born in Indiana. Neither of us he left here when he was very young, and neither of us had really ever been out to the Midwest. But when I finished my residency in Baltimore, we had one child by that point. We were looking for more out of family life and just a place that was a little bit slower, a little bit quieter, more family-friendly. Baltimore is pretty congested and not always the safest place to raise a family. So his brother lived here in LaGrange County, and we came out here for a visit. I ended up staying out here and doing a month rotation here, and we kind of just fell in love with the area, so we thought it would be a good place to start. So we just took a leap of faith and moved out here his brother lives there, but really with nobody else, and I took a job with the group I work for. It's actually called Professional Emergency Physicians, where I'm contracted by Parkview to staff all their emergency rooms. And so anything with a Parkview name on it, we staff. So we moved out here a little over 6 years ago. I started my job. We subsequently had 2 more children, so I have 3 children, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And I spend about 50% of my time at Parkview Regional up north and 50% of my time in Randalia. And then I pick up various shifts throughout the community at Whitley and different hospitals like that. What else? So that's kind of where I came from, my education, my background, where we brings it up now. I'm a full-time doctor. I work in the ER, but kind of Parkview has placed an emphasis on children, and so I kind of run and do some quality control and management of the pediatric side of the emergency department, because as you know, kids and adults both come in there. So that is my background from a professional standpoint. Like I said, I'm married. My husband goes to school full-time and takes care of the 3 bundles of joy at home. And we, just to give you a little bit, so from a faith background, as this is for campus ministry, so when I was very young, we went to church, and we'll kind of get into this with some of the questions. We didn't go to church as I was growing up. I was not raised in a Christian home. My husband was raised in a Christian home. He kind of strayed from his faith. So when we met and got married, neither of us were living or practicing Christian lifestyle. We weren't attending church. A little more, I'm sure we'll get into with the questions she's going to ask, but obviously we both had intervention we both received the Lord, became Christians, and this was after I had decided, this was when I was in my residency. So after I finished my med school into residencies, it completely changed our lives. It completely changed really every aspect of our lives. So we are now fully devoted to the Lord. We try to live our lives and serve the Lord, which is an interesting change when you've kind of already picked your career prior to becoming a Christian, and then it changes from there. So we feel very blessed to be in this area and love the Fort Wayne area. And I think, did I cover? So that's kind of some basic background on us. So, Jill, it's you.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Jill Hansen, and I have my degree in marriage and family therapy, and kind of the route that got me started on that. I was born and raised in Indiana. I've been in Fort Wayne my whole life, and I basically have always wanted to do that particular job since, as far as I can remember back, I think I was in junior high when I first officially decided this is really what I want to do with my life. And like Abby, I did not grow up in a Christian home, and at one point my mom did accept the Lord, and I started seeing really big changes in her life, changes that I was convinced that she could not do on her own. It was just kind of a testament to how faith can really change our lives. And so she handed me some books on Dr. James Dobson, and he's a Christian psychologist. And she said, here, basically, I want you to read these. And I remember reading those books and thinking that they had a lot of truth in it, a lot of things that made sense to me. And I thought, I want to learn about as much as I can about this, because not only do I want to improve my own life, I want to be able to help other people. And so that's kind of where it began, the thought of wanting to become a therapist. And then when I went to college, I realized how long you had to go to become a therapist, and I quickly decided I want to look at other options. So I did try other majors. I tried, I think, health science, and I tried business, and I tried different classes, and none of them seemed to fit. And every psychology class and every kind of class related to that, I just instantly loved and felt connected to. So I decided I'm just going to do what I have to do to get through, and I just went straight through, no stopping, went from Ball State, finished that in 4 years, came here and to the program under Dr. Utesh, and it was a really great experience for me. Thank you, Melissa, for reminding people how long ago that was. But coming to campus today, it reminded me it's been a while, but it's great to be here. So again, I was raised in a home that was not a faith home. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and so again, I wanted to learn everything I could to be able to set my life up for success. And I met my husband, and we've been married. We're going to be going on 14 years. And I have 2 kids. They're both girls, and they're homesick today, unfortunately. One is age 7, and the other one is age 3. And through parenting, I've had a lot of training and things like that, but I'll tell you, parenting is one of the things that has taught me a lot about life too. And I've really learned a lot about anything from patience to so many things that have helped me. And so I went here to IPFW. After that, I went on to work for the Bowen Center in Albion. And I've also worked for Lutheran Social Services. And so I kind of have the experience of working in a place that's community-based versus faith-based. So I've had that experience. And then from Albion, I went to a place called Whelan and Associates out Southwest. I worked there for 5 years. And currently I'm working at a place called the Aberdeen Group. It's located by PMRC out there off of DuPont Road. There's some office buildings over there. And I've been working with that group since January. And it's a really neat story how I got connected with them, but I won't go into that too much. Other than it definitely was being led by the Lord for me to take that job. So other than that, I just enjoy Fort Wayne. I have lots of family here, and I really feel like this is so. I mean, I've met so many great people through being in this community, and so that's pretty much the main information.
So I have the great opportunity of going to church with these 2 ladies, and our children are all really close in ages. And in fact, my kids go to school with Jill's kids, and I just know that they're very trustworthy, and they're 2 of my closest friends. And I know that what they share today, I hope will be helpful to you. I know that they have been a source of prayer for me, and I just appreciate them. So, all right, we're going to start with some questions here. And let me get them together. Here we go. All right, so you shared a little bit about this, but if you would say a little bit more specifically, was your faith a factor in choosing your profession? And whether it was or not, have you seen God's hand in it?
So obviously mine was not. Melissa likes to tell my story, but it's sort of true. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, as many, I'm sure, college students feel. I knew I wanted to work with people. I didn't know so really I'd kind of narrowed it down to I was either going to be a teacher or I was going to be a doctor. And those are sort of different paths you have to decide on pretty early in college to get on the right track there. And I didn't grow up in a Christian home. There was no prayer involved in it. I just remember my mom said, you can always go back and be a teacher, but it's going to be much harder to go back and start over and be a doctor. And I thought, yeah, she's probably right. I'll just be a doctor. So that, unfortunately, is my story on how I became a doctor. Now, I mean, I had narrowed it down, so it wasn't just out of left field, but I thought, yeah. And I thought, I always was up for a challenge. So I thought, what's the hardest thing that I can do? And I thought med school sounds like it, and I think I was right. So faith had no part in it. There was no prayer. There was no, not until, after becoming a doctor did I become a Christian. And so faith had to answer the question, faith had nothing to do with my initial decision, but I've certainly seen how the Lord has blessed the decision. I have had the chance to see and to, I'm in the emergency room, which to me seems like the place where the lost go a lot of times. So people who don't have insurance, people who are broken, people who have addictions, people who are homeless. I mean, I would hate to be in a profession where I couldn't help someone because they couldn't pay me. And so I feel like the ER to me feels like the place that if Jesus was going to be, that's where he would probably be hanging out most Friday and Saturday nights, which is where I'm hanging out most Friday and Saturday nights. So So I have seen that decision to go into emergency medicine has led me down that path, and certainly it's not all roses, and it can be a difficult and trying profession, but it has been blessed immensely, and I've seen where the Lord had His hand in my decision early on, even though I didn't know it. So,
yeah, faith definitely plays a role in my profession, and as I explained earlier, even played a role in my decision to be a part of this profession. And I really feel like it is what I am called to do, and I feel like there's a passion that comes from that I just, most people in my profession have a specialty that they tend to gravitate towards, whether it be children, whether it be adults. In my training at the Bowen Center, my first job out of college, I was kind of like the jack of all trades there. I didn't really get the opportunity to work with any particular group. I had to be open to seeing whoever came for help, and so I worked doing drug and alcohol groups. I worked with kids. I worked with parents. I mean, couples. Pretty much everything that that people would want to specialize in, and through that experience, I just decided I just love meeting with people. I don't have any particular people group that I like to meet with. I just love meeting people, and so. So I've had training in play therapy, and I work with children. I also work with couples. I work with all ages. I've worked with 19 months all the way up to in their 80s. And so I just really feel like that's such an integral part of being open to what the Lord has for each person that comes through, praying for them before they arrive. Now, I would like to say that I always spend a lot of time, but sometimes it's just a quick prayer right before we enter the room, and sometimes the person will be on my mind and heart before they arrive, and just really trying to rely on the wisdom that God gives us to be able to help people in the best way. So that is so important to me, because I know that God is much bigger than anything that I can do, anything that I can share. And so even when they leave the room, I just pray, God, that they would be, that He would watch over them and be with them, and give me wisdom on how to help them, because each person is so unique, and their situations are specific. And I really believe that He often helps provide wisdom on how to help people, because if it was just in my own strength or in my own wisdom, I think I would be overwhelmed a lot. I would not always know what to do. And He really helps to lead and guide me in that process.
Some of these questions might kind of relate to one another, but if there's something different that you think of, go ahead and share it. How do you practically live out your faith in the workplace? Something we can all relate to in whatever profession we're in.
Well, for me to live out my faith in the workplace, I really feel like it's a priority to me to have my faith be a part of my work, but yet I also need to be very respectful of every person that comes through, that they may have faith, they may not have faith, they may have something completely different than what I'm accustomed to, and I need to respect that, and I really try to basically use the principles, though, and a lot of scripture to be able to help lead the conversation. And there's a lot of times that I'll use scripture in therapy, and if you're a Christian, you believe that the word is truth. And so most of the things in Scripture line up a lot of times with what research says, with what cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the therapies that I use quite frequently. And a lot of that is on challenging negative thinking and on trying to promote positive thinking in your life. And that's a lot of times lines up just what would Scripture say. It says to think on whatever is good, whatever's righteous, whatever's lovely, whatever's praiseworthy, to think on these things. And a lot of times people will come through the door and they'll be so discouraged that they literally are filled with so much heaviness and worry and negative thoughts about their life or about themselves or about others, and it's really hard for them to think about things that might be going good in their life, or think about things that could help them to be uplifted. And so I really try to use Scripture whenever I can. Try to be very respectful in that process. If somebody is comfortable with that, or if they're not, I lead them gently where they're at. So.
How is it practically? Tell me
How do you
again.
practically live out your faith in the workplace?
Okay, so I don't get a chance to, unlike Jill, provide Christian counseling or advice. Many times it's not why people are there, and not kind of not as accepted as I work, in a hospital. And so what I try to do is just try, and, it can get extremely, not every day is stressful. Some days are just kind of normal days. Some days are extremely stressful. But I just try to remember that, and people at work know that I'm a Christian, and I feel that kind of puts our behavior a little bit more on the spotlight. So I try to treat, I try not to judge. I try to treat everyone as I would want to be treated if I came into the emergency room. Oftentimes people are extremely upset and agitated, and I have a pretty calm demeanor. So what you see is what you get, and I'm pretty calm. And I just try to remember that, that these people are hurting. A lot of times so they're just there for help. And so, God is using me to help them and reach out to them. And certainly if a conversation comes up, or if they ask or if I want to pray, I'm very open to doing that. And I just try to live and just not get kind of, obviously some things that lead people into the emergency room, some of that is from sin, obviously not all of it, but, and just to remember that, we can be a light for the Lord, and just that they're there for care, and that's what I'm there to provide. So that's practically how I try to work.
How does the spiritual side of a person interact with their physical, mental, and emotional sides?
Well, I think in terms of a whole person being like a picture, and you basically have to be aware of each part of a person. The spiritual, the physical, the mental, all of that is important to what makes us feel good, what makes us a whole person. And if you're only pouring into the pitcher for mental health, but yet you're forgetting the physical, you're forgetting all of the other things, then you're not going to feel completely satisfied. You're not going to feel like it's enough. And so it's really important that one of the things that I really work on teaching people is to have balance in our life. And I find so many people that come, not in every case, but there are some cases where they might have the physical, they might have a lot of things that they're doing good in, but a lot of times the spiritual side is often ignored or just completely forgotten. And that's such an integral part of who we are. And so I think part of therapy is helping people to see the importance of having balance in their lives.
Do you find other professionals you work with to be accepting of your faith position? And how do you relate to coworkers who have a differing perspective?
Well, with my coworkers, we don't often sit around and talk about our faith. I certainly know which of my coworkers are Christians, just from discussions over church activities and things that we'll talk about, just kind of regular conversation. But I think so. But we don't certainly sit around and have. We're usually busy anyway, and so we're at work. But I just think not becoming part of any negative. So some will get discouraged, or use language that just the various things that you can just walk away from is what I think. So I think that in the situation, if you are not in a Christian environment, which certainly I don't work in one for the most part, then I just think walking away from any kind of gossip or just any kind of talk that I think would be unpleasing without being confrontational, but just removing yourself. You know, it's always busy. There's always somewhere you can go. There's always something you can be doing. So.
Okay, can you remind me of the question again?
Do you find other professionals that you work with to be accepting of your faith position, and how do you relate to those coworkers who have a differing perspective?
I do have the fortune of working with the majority of people I work with do have some kind of faith, or you know, I would say at least half the people I work with are come from a Christian perspective and really practice that in their job and everything like that. So I would say that if I'm working with a coworker that doesn't have a faith perspective, I would treat it much like I would a client. I would just basically meet them where they're at. You know, I have to understand and respect other people have different opinions and different views, and I just try to my best live out my Christian principles, and I really feel like just showing them just love and kindness is the most important thing to do in the workplace. And I'm very fortunate of who I'm working with because they're a really good group of people. And so I really feel like instead of just trying to avoid somebody or trying to change their mind about it, it's just meeting them where they're at and forming that relationship. Because you're not going to be able to impact them with your faith if you're kind of having a bad attitude, or if you are judging where they're at, kind of thing. So I just really try to just be kind and do the things that I need to do with love.
Is it okay for a Christian to be on medicine for mental health, like depression, anxiety, etc., and it doesn't make them, in your opinion, any less of a Christian?
So this is one that I have thought about a lot because certainly sometimes in society, in church, and everywhere, there's stigma attached to mental illness. So, you know, there's some beliefs that depression is, you know, more satanic warfare, and that it, you know, requires more prayer. And so I think that there are many components to treating mental illness. I absolutely think that there are many people who necessitate medications for depression. Depression isn't just something that people can snap out of. It's not something you can just change. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain, bipolar, depression. So I certainly believe that there are absolutely medications, that there are absolutely people who do need medication. I don't believe that medication itself is the only treatment for depression. I feel that it absolutely needs to be used in conjunction with counseling, and for Christian spiritual, you know, Christian-based counseling, I think is obviously fantastic in treating the whole person. So absolutely, I think medications should be utilized. I think, at least from what I've seen, that there's likely an increase in medication, and whether that's a societal issue with just the way that society has such high expectations on what we're able to do and get less sleep and get more into a day and things like that. I certainly think some of that's a consequence of us kind of as a society taking less care of ourselves and having more responsibilities on us as women and as men. So I think there's a lot of influences and reasons why we're seeing more depression, but I do not think it makes anyone less of a Christian to be on these medications. I think they should be used carefully, and they should be used, you know, under the careful consideration with a doctor, but certainly, I think that being on them, it is a, you know, chemical imbalance that requires medications. So,
yeah. I mean, I would say a lot of times clients come in, they are referred by a doctor, and they say, I want to try counseling first, and if I don't get results from counseling, then I'll look at doing medication. And a lot of times people are very hesitant, I think, because of what Abby said, the stigma, and just very hesitant on it. And I've never met a single person that I've said, you know, you might want to meet with your doctor to look at medication as an option. I've never met anybody that said, oh, that's a great idea, I can't wait to do that. Normally they just look at me like I don't want to do that. And so that's a common thing because I think of the stigma that we've had in our society. And a lot of times, or sometimes I will have people come in that have a faith background, and they will, much like the question, just say, that I don't really want to rely on that. I think I'm just going to rely on prayer and things like that. And I absolutely think that that's an amazing thing to utilize and to help. We again look at the whole person physically. If there's a chemistry issue, then you're going to need to look at that as a possible option. And the difference, the clients that actually do follow recommendation and go get the medication, the difference is it's unbelievable sometimes how much of an impact it makes to have what they need chemically. So I think it's through prayer, it's through support that and through meeting with medical professionals to figure out what works best for you and what are the best options.
Since we're talking about it, we have a lot of students, and I'm going to kind of focus this a little bit like towards college students, I guess, or just people in general who suffer from anxiety or depression. I see a lot of that in the students that we deal with. A lot more students on anxiety medication, etc. What are some things that you can say from a professional and a Christian perspective to people who suffer from those things? Anything additional to what you've said already?
As far as anxiety and college students, I see an increase every year around a certain time of year where I'll get more high school seniors or juniors coming in, and they're very worried about, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Where am I going to go to college? I mean, these are huge decisions that impact their entire life. And at such a young age, they're supposed to be required to make that decision. And it's very overwhelming for some students. And they want to be successful, but it's one of those things that causes a lot of stress. And then you have the tests to take to get into college and all of that kind of thing. And so, clearly with that, sometimes, especially if you're already prone to anxiety, those kind of seasons in your life, you're going to probably have some big anxiety. And then when you go into college, a lot of times you're very, very busy. You're trying to work a full or part-time job. You're trying to do well in your studies and trying to maintain some kind of social life. And so sometimes it can be very overwhelming in that season, especially. And so I think to, first of all, reach out for support, to not isolate yourself and feel like you have to hide your anxiety in front of everybody. I don't think that you want to go around talking about it to everybody, but at least a few trusted people in your life to let them know, hey, I'm struggling with this. Could you be praying for me? And again, I mean, the counseling option of figuring out coping skills, a lot of times there's simple coping skills that you could do to change the way that you feel. We talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, changing some of your thinking, giving yourself mini breaks throughout the day, deep breathing. All of these kind of things can really make a difference. And sometimes life is so busy that we forget to do the simple things to take care of ourselves. So.
I think a lot of anxiety, especially if we're talking about college, and certainly I went to a lot of schooling, is that you put these unreasonable expectations on yourselves, and I have to get all A's, or I can't do this. I have to get this done, or I can't do this. I got B's, and I'm still a doctor. So you can get a B. You can get grades that are not always all A's, and you can still be okay. And I think the importance is, like what Jill said, to put it into perspective too, and just put your mind to what you want to do. When I very first met with the pre-med advisor at the college, he looked at kind of some of my stuff, and he said, well, a lot of people want to be doctors and very few will follow through. So, have a plan B. And I thought, well, that's not going to be me. So, I mean, I just tell you that to kind of say that there's going to be people that are going to discourage you. If it's what you want, then just keep going for it. And they're going to say, if you don't get all A's, you can't do this. If you don't get this grade, you can't do it. And it's just not true. And I think that leads to a lot of anxiety, especially in college and med school. For me, the thought that if I didn't do this, then I can't do this. And, just taking time out and realizing that God's bigger than this, that he knows our hearts and he is there to guide us and help us throughout the way.
Have you noticed any inaccurate assumptions or attitudes from believers towards your profession, from people who are already Christians towards counseling or towards the medical field? And what would you say to correct them?
This one makes me laugh, because how many times, come on, have you guys all sat in church and they've said, well, the doctor said this, but they were wrong. So we hear that all the time in our church, and my husband always elbows me because it just makes me laugh, because I think I'm so happy to be wrong. I love being wrong. I mean, I know what the medical literature tells me and what the research tells me, right? But God can step in and change everything, and he can heal, and he's miraculous, and I've seen it. And so I always tell people I am happy to be wrong. I like to be wrong. Prove me wrong. And so God proves us all wrong all the time. And there are things that I've seen that I can't explain medically, that I know are the Lord. And so I think I tell people the two things that I'm not afraid to say is, sometimes I can say, I don't know. I don't know why this should have happened, but it didn't, and the outcome was different. And I do know it's because of God, but I don't medically know why that happened. And so I just think a lot of times doctors don't want to be wrong. We want them to be right all the time, but God.
Do you have anything to add?
I think that was good.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that answered that question too. Sorry. What's my place here? What advice would you give to a person who is pursuing a career in your field?
I feel like I get asked this question randomly. What is it like? What's your therapy like? Give me advice for me or anything like that? And I just, first of all, just say, really, it has to be something that you really feel a true calling for in my profession, because there's such a high rate of burnout, and I really believe to be in my profession, you have to have a lot of support. You have to be willing to take care of yourself, because you're going to be about the business of taking care of everyone else. And so you don't want to get to a place where you're so burnt out that you don't have anything in you left to help others. And so the first thing I would say is that you really feel called to do it. The second thing is to talk to other people in the profession. I remember when I was going to be a therapist, I said, I think I'm going to try to figure this out and see if I can maybe even job shadow some therapists. And I did. And it was a really good experience. And so ask other professionals in the field, see if you can maybe even shadow to see, does this feel like a good fit for me? And I think that's one of the main things.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Jill said. I think knowing what you're getting into, people always say the healthcare profession isn't today what it was 10 years ago, and I'm sure 10 years from now it's not going to be the same. But if you felt led, and if you feel through prayer and in your heart that you're meant to do it, then don't let anyone, just do it. And that's what I had to kind of learn. So if it's what you think is going to, if it's what you felt called and led to go and do, then just don't let anyone discourage you and just do it.
I would like to add something to that topic, is just also to be a therapist. I think that you definitely need to be willing to get help yourself. I remember having the master's degree here, going through this program at IPFW, and I remember, I think it was Dr. Jim Berg said, if you're going to be a therapist, then you need to get therapy first. And so I really feel like, even as a therapist, you need to be able to be willing to grow and to change and to even get help yourself before you are able to help others.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would say to people about just the line between, or the balance of the healing power of God and seeking professional help and medical help in particular, I guess. You hear people who want to just go off of their medicine on their own, and what's your perspective on that?
I've thought a lot about this, especially when I was starting off in medicine and wasn't a Christian, and then became a Christian and had to think, where's the line, where's putting our faith in people versus putting our faith in the Lord. And the way that I've reconciled it, and it may or may not be the way that other people think of it, is I believe that the Lord has given us the knowledge, and He has given the ability to help one another. And so what I carry out or what I'm able to do is only through the Lord. And so the Lord has allowed for people to know how to make medications to treat certain conditions, to increase our lives, to have doctors who can treat cancer with different medications. And I feel that has all been put into play through the Lord. And so I think there always has to be a balance between knowing that that we don't live in a perfect world, and that we do have things like high blood pressure and cancer and depression, and those require treatment. And going off, I don't know that, I don't speak for the Lord, but I don't know that if there's medications out there that can help, that they're not used, because we live in a fallen world, as we all know. And so I think there's a balance, but I think that the people that I have seen, people who I've seen get a lot better and have a balance between the medications and the medical aspect, as well as their faith and prayer from their church. And I think the combination of the two, I think, is where the success lays. Going to one extreme or the other, I think, oftentimes causes problems. So that's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Abby said, and I think that when people come into my office, one of the first things that we do as we're trying to get to know what's bringing them there and everything else is we assess how severe is the particular symptoms. So if it's anxiety, it could be anything from very mild all the way to extreme severe panic. And same thing with depression, mild all the way to very severe depression even. So based upon, so I think it would be helpful to meet with professionals to figure out basically how serious of a problem it is. Because if you are one of those that have serious depression, then you're going to want to reach out to people and not be isolated and alone and things like that. And so prayer is never a bad idea. Prayer is always, I believe, the Bible says that the prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And I know that God hears our prayers and cares very deeply what we pray to Him. I know He's also created us as social beings, and so He's created us to, like Abby said, help each other and to be there for each other. And so if you have a problem, especially if it's something that's been going on for a while, and especially if I've tried prayer, I've tried all these things, and I'm suffering, I'm feeling really bad, do not be ashamed or feel bad or feel like, oh, my faith isn't strong enough, or I must be weak, or this or that. Those things are not the case, because a lot of times it could be a chemical issue, or it could be that you just need to process things out loud with somebody who can help you learn how to deal with some things that you're carrying around. So I definitely think faith and prayer are very important to mental health, but it goes back to being a whole balanced individual, that we need to be aware of everything that's available to us. If we're feeling terrible, then we're going to want to know every available option to help us that's healthy for us.
Do you see a difference in patients who have faith in God?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I see a difference for people who come in and they have a really good biblical foundation and they understand biblical truths. I mean, I feel like their progress tends, and this is just from my experience and what I've witnessed, and just in my own personal life, when I apply the truth and when I am in God's Word that makes such a difference in my life, and I see that in my clients as well. I feel like they have a good foundation to start with, and so the build is a lot quicker, I feel like. But there are times that I have people who come in that have had that background, but maybe it was in a church where they felt very legalistic, or they felt very judged, or things like that, and that's something that they carry that really hinders them from getting better, because they either feel bad about themselves, or they've had a bad experience and they're angry with God, or those kind of things. And so I definitely feel like, again, it goes back to each individual is in a different place, and just respecting where that is, and helping them find their way based on where they're at when they come in.
Did you have anything to add?
Mine's just little. I have short interactions. Oftentimes, I don't know if people are Christians or not, so it's a little more difficult.
Right, because as an emergency doctor, you're seeing people just one at a time, kind of thing, not regularly.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have about 5 minutes, so if anybody from the audience has a question that they would like to ask, we are open to doing that now.
What do you all do when there's a fellow professional, either a doctor or a therapist, who you know maybe doesn't have the best interest of people at heart? I know there are people in both your professions maybe that are doing more harm than good. I'm sure that bothers you. How do you deal with that in your own thinking and in the way you relate to those people?
In the emergency room in general, it's not always glamorous. It's kind of the trenches, as we refer to it. And so I feel fortunate that the group of doctors in the ER that I work with, I do believe that we, whether they are Christian or not, have a calling to that job to help anybody in any situation. Now, that being said, it's kind of the group that I work with, but I feel like we have the fortunate opportunity to get patients access and be advocates for them. So, calling a specialist in the middle of the night, waking them up, and a lot of times they're willing to do the right thing, but just kind of pushing. And I just feel like we, and the group that I work with, I think, can just be the best advocates for them. So I think I do agree. I mean, you see on the news, physicians that are certainly not out for their patients' best interests. And those interactions can be difficult, but I think I just think of it as my job to be their advocate. And so if I get no somewhere from somewhere, I'll find another way to get a yes for them. So, I mean, I'm just resourceful, and I think that it's my job and duty to them that if I don't feel that whoever I'm interacting with is doing the right thing or has their best interest, then I'll just go another route with it. So.
And specifically, Jill, I was thinking about, there's different therapeutic models for counselors. Mm-hmm. And maybe a counselor is using a therapeutic model that's not biblical. Mm-hmm. And I would think, if I were in your shoes, I'd have a hard time being able to look at that person and think, I don't know that you're doing people any good. In fact, you might be doing them a lot of harm. So, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier that fortunately most of the therapeutic models in my profession do line up with biblical truth, which is a good thing. As far as if they're doing more harm than good, for example, if some therapists are really more into they're going to send you to different areas to get, let's say, relaxation techniques, and a lot of those things are not lined up with biblical truth. I don't want to mention any specifically, but there are things that do not line up with Scripture. It's more of a New Age kind of way of thinking, and it really saddens me because I feel like sometimes people are being led astray a little bit in some of that. And I mean, all I can do is do what I am called to do and follow the truth and try the best I can, but I can't be responsible and accountable for everybody else. But I do tell a lot of clients, or if people say, do you have a therapist to recommend? I say, go ahead and give a therapist a try. But if after 2 to 3 sessions, if you don't feel like you're making a connection, or if you're not feeling like you're hearing biblical truth or things like that, that don't feel like you have to continue with that person. There's a lot of different professionals, and I feel like you need to find somebody that makes a good fit. And first of all, starting off the bat, call and say, I really want to be connected with a faith-based therapist. That would kind of weed out, I think, a lot of that initially in the beginning anyway. So,
anything else? Well, we're really grateful that you came. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it very much.
It felt so nice.